All right, guys. We're finally back. I know you guys have all been waiting on pins and needles, waiting for another episode, thinking we might have given up, but that's not us. We're not giving up. We're coming off the heels of the 4-part O.J. Simpson special covers that we provided for everybody. I hope people enjoyed that and learned something from us. Heard some things that you might not have known about the man, the myth, not so much the legend O.J. Simpson. And we had fun doing that, but now we're ready to just get back down to brass taxes. I'm here with Jon, who's not going to say anything. Oh, we're stoked. That's his favorite thing to say anymore on this show. And I apologize. We have a couple episodes in the can that I was going to get to. Jon's just coming off of a vacation, so I was going to get in the editing booth and start trimming up some of these episodes that we have ready to release, and I was going to release some stuff, but I'm just feeling like lately the Continental Army in winter of 1776. Just down and out, beaten up a little bit. That's kind of how my summer's been going. So we're just going to keep pushing forward, just like Washington crossing the old Delaware with this episode. And I think we got some interesting stuff to talk about. So we figured we would get it going. Jon, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. I've missed the show. As Matt mentioned, I
kind of did miss doing it too.
For a couple of weeks. I was overseas. I was able to take a break from the U.S. news cycle.
I kept you in the loop a little bit.
I missed a whirlwind. A little bit. Last I heard, it was the debate debacle. And then, but I was back on shore for the biggest event of this past week.
Well, before we get to that, Jon, I was thinking something that just happened today. My sister just told me. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I think I just want to get something in quickly. I was thinking about, President Trump, or former President Trump, just named his running mate today, I believe. Some bozo lawyer from Ohio, I think. Shocking, a lawyer running.
Former Marine.
Well, can't knock him for that, I suppose, but.
But you'll still try. And he made a movie. Netflix made a movie about how he came from like literally nothing. He was like super poor rural family, and he able to make a life of himself. Kind of the story of the American dream in a nutshell. But
well, that's neat.
Won a Senate seat at 38.
Wow. Okay.
But what else did you learn about
Thomas
him?
Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence when he was younger than that, so I don't know how that's such a great accomplishment, but whatever. I guess, generation by generation, you got to lower the standard. But anyway, so I was going to get to, Jon, true. I was thinking, anybody, don't think too hard about it, but politician, not politician, anything, however you want to go, anybody in American history, what would your dream ticket be?
What are you talking about? What's the question?
Your dream ticket. The presidential election.
Oh, who I would want on a ticket?
Yeah. All history of America. Let's see how boring this answer is going to be.
I mean, I don't know. Probably. I guess I have to go Cleveland, or maybe just a Cleveland Tyler, up and down. Who both serve, know what it takes.
Who would be president? Who would be vice president?
I think you have to make, well, only because John Tyler has served as vice president. I would say you can make Grover the president, and then he'd know if anything were to happen to him in the times we live in. He know JT would be there to back him up.
So you would pick two former presidents as being your prime choice. I was thinking they didn't have to necessarily be politicians, but your answer would be politicians.
I'd consider them more statesmen than politicians. We have politicians now. I would consider John Tyler more of a statesman.
That's cool. Yeah. So anyway, that was just a little, I just thought it'd be fun to talk about who our dream ticket would be, but you made it kind of less fun than I thought it was going to be.
That'd be kind of a, okay.
What?
I didn't think that was, maybe this was the appropriate episode in light of the current news cycle.
I interrupted your breaking
Literally
news.
was trying to get into what the episode's actually about, because our primary feedback is we lack structure and focus, and I get asked who my dream team of presidents are.
I didn't.
Probably could have guessed them because I've told you who my favorite presidents are.
I said it could have been anybody. I thought maybe you would have said Axl Rose and Leslie Nielsen.
I think we literally have an episode pre-written for us with what happened to a former president, and you want to come up with something that's
well, it was
totally
just it was an intro. It was an intro. I'm letting the fans know a little bit about us.
Could have been, how was your trip? What history did you learn?
I don't care about your trip, to be honest with you. It wasn't in America. I don't care.
What were you missing? Well, I can tell you there could have been other things we could have discussed your show.
Well, why didn't you bring it to the table? You were just being silent while I was doing our whole intro. I was talking, and then
a little cupcake. Who's your favorite? We could have done that in the Deck of Cards episode. Rewind. Go back to the.
Speaking of Deck of Cards, we're gonna do a Deck of Cards about all the assassinators.
Probably have to go international with that one, unless we included like governors, and senators. Maybe there's enough.
Yeah, conspiracies. Could consider maybe a Kennedy as an assassinator of Marilyn Monroe. Would count.
Well, one of our guys here that I've got lined up.
Okay. Let's take a time out. Let's take a time out. Saved by the Bell style. Time out. And we're going to rewind back to before I interrupted you with my quote unquote cupcake question. And let's get back to the nitty gritty of what we're in for today. So I interrupted you. You were saying you were missing out on a lot of the American news, current event news while you were over in Europe. And you came back with a bang.
Yes, I missed the debate. I missed all of that concern. And then I came back on a Wednesday, and just 72 hours later, still a little jet lagged. just like Biden for the debate. 2 weeks later.
Are you still... We could chalk this whole episode up to John being jet lagged. It seems to work.
Could be. Works for the Prez. But yeah, well, I had news. Don't ask me why, but I was watching a show down in Virginia at my future sister-in-law's house, and I was with her husband, and we were watching just for laughs. We were like, let's just put Newsmax on and let's see this Trump thing. But we had it on, and I feel like the guy made the audience wait for like 40 minutes. So somebody out in the audience is probably pretty hot and bothered. It's like 95 degrees out there. Anyway,
are you getting to motives? Are you getting to potential motives here? Or
I don't know. He was gone a long time. It was hot in Virginia. I'm sure it wasn't that much cooler up in Butler, PA. And yeah, we had it turned on, and then we actually changed the channel. We started watching the baseball game instead. And then all of a sudden I get a breaking news text from my reliable source. My only reliable source in all things current events.
Dude.
Mr. Matt, you
broke the news wide open. I was watching it live.
What was your motivation for watching it live? I didn't ask you that. Why were you watching it?
So I was at the
You just
gym.
feel like something was going to happen, a la LeBron James. For any of our fans who aren't aware, LeBron James is a clairvoyant apparently, because he was reading about previous assassinations the same day of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, which is what we're talking about for any of those who think we're beating around the proverbial bush here.
So
LeBron James said it's weird that happened because I was just reading about John Woo and I thought something bad could happen. So LeBron James saw it coming. Did you?
No, I did not have, although maybe there was some telepathy there with some pregnant ladies related to LeBron and all those signals getting crossed around the country, and maybe I was near somebody like that. But no, I happened to be at the gym. I was at the gym, and my gym, for some reason, the TVs that you can't change the channels for, I don't think, have Fox News, CNN, Fox News, CNN, Fox News, CNN, ESPN, Fox News, CNN, Fox News, CNN, ESPN, all down the row in front of the treadmills. And I plop myself in front of the ESPN. So I'm watching ESPN, and then I'm finishing my run. And I saw that Trump was, I think CNN, I was watching CNN was next to me, and I saw that Trump had that thing. I'm like, oh, that's weird. It's his last one before the national convention. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And then finish my run, and I look up, and they're literally, the Secret Service is on top of Trump, and I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like staring at it, and there's this guy on the bike next to me, not paying attention. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, what's going on? And I can't hear it, so I'm reading the scrambled up closed captions that are on there. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And it dawned on me, I'm like, I have to be the only one that I know watching Fox News right now. There's no way anyone's seeing this live. So I'm just on my phone, just sending out breaking news texts and blowing everybody's mind. And no one was really believing me at first. And John got it.
You were also not sending like links to like actual... Well, maybe I guess it was maybe like the New York Times and them hadn't even heard about it yet, because you were sending me things on X, formerly Twitter, of a guy recording his television screen and then posting it.
Yeah. So of course,
send you a good X feed.
I couldn't believe I was watching it live. Like, just the complete coincidence of the timing that it was, like 6 o'clock, just very strange. So we're like, hey, as soon as that happened, we're like, priority number one, podcast got some good material here, or something that we can do to just kind of relate to it. And we were kind of spitballing, and we kind of landed on, let's go through some of the lesser known assassination attempts in the history of the country, and kind of go through how the circumstances of those, and just kind of might be fun to kind of dive into some that we might have never heard of before. There's a couple, I'm an amateur history enthusiast. I never said I was good at it either. So there's a couple of them that I actually didn't even know had occurred. So just wanted to talk about those motives and stuff. I mean, we're not going to touch on the current assassination attempt, just because, there's not really much information. Yeah.
No one knows what the long-term consequence is going to be about. Is there going to be new regulations, new laws passed, gun control? I mean, who knows? Like, what might, if anything, come of it? But I think, there's a lot of other things in the previous assassinations that go back that are more obscure, have some really kind of interesting, consequential history behind them that we're still kind of seeing today. So, yeah. Sorry, now I cut you off.
Oh no, that's good. So let's get into it. I just the thought that crossed my mind, talking about this and thinking about it, is like, when you're on the internet and you're seeing all these memes coming up, like on Twitter, formerly X, or no, X, formerly Twitter, or Instagram, or anything. There's a ton of memes coming out. And I guess they're like similar to like what the political cartoons would have been back in the day, I suppose. I guess there might have been some funny, some humorous, satirical stuff that came out after some of these assassination attempts. I think you sent me one that seemed a bit satirical. So I'm not sure if any of these will go down in history as such, but like for example, calling the shooter retardy Oswald is a little off the chin. It is funny though. Oh man, I mean, I think, God, people are clever. I'll tell you. If anyone put that ever,
clever.
If
Just
people,
when you doubt, oh man, people are so stupid now, and then it's like, wow, that's a really clever, witty thing. Witty.
like, wonder who thought of that
Sorry.
one, dude. I mean, I would just love to meet the person who was who put that together. I mean, that's just too funny to me.
People were just quick to the draw, unlike retardy Oswald. But so some people were just quick on the draw.
All right. Anyway,
let's
get started. Let's go in chronological order, John. So, what do you have for us here for the earliest? What do you want to call these?
Well, we'll just say the first one. We don't have to get into it. The very first attempt. No, I lied. The first successful assassination was of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth. And I don't have it pulled up here, but it was April of 1865 in Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C. If you want to hear all about that, you can go down to D.C. They'll give you a tour, take you across the street to where they took his body after he was shot in the head. I mean, you can get indoctrinated with all that elsewhere. But moving on from that, so like I said, about 20 years would pass, and the next time another president was shot, it would eventually be killed. And that is the assassination of our 20th president. And Matt, do you know who that is without looking it up? Unless you have it already on your screen.
I don't. Grover Cleveland.
Is incorrect.
James Garfield.
James A. Garfield.
James Garfield.
So it happened, assassination of James A. Garfield. He was shot at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. on the morning of Saturday, July 2nd, 1881.
Okay, so it was hot. It was hot out.
So it was very hot. And Matt, do you think he died on scene or after the fact?
I'm guessing the way you set this up, he did not die on scene.
That is correct. He was shot in the back from the picture I'm looking at, but he died 2.5 months later, September 19th, 1881. And it's
oh damn, 2 months. Oh boy.
Medically confirmed that if it had happened today, he would have easily survived it. The bullet did not kill him. It was the secondary infections and the poking and prodding of his surgeons, who at that time, the very early days of Louis Pasteur and other ideas of germ theory was kind of still a crackpot thing that I think the French were still just playing around with. And so, yeah, there was a lot of hygiene. So, you get blood on your hand, someone else's blood on your hands. You just go right into the next surgery room. And so, yeah, they were just poking and prodding all around in President Garfield's business. And so that would eventually kill him. But kind of focusing a little more on the assassin. Matt, have you seen a picture of this guy?
No.
The assassin, Garfield's assassin. So looked pretty crazy, even by 1881 standards. I think even the photographer was like, can you close your eyes a little bit? You're kind of freaking me out. So this is a man by the name of Charles J. Guiteau. And in his picture, he's bright-eyed, staring off into space, almost looks possessed, like he's been told by a voice in his head to...
I don't think so.
I think.
I think he looks stoic.
It's like a regular office seeker or job seeker. So, so
I'd hire him.
It? I guess my next question is, so just before I ask you my next question.
I mean, stop asking me questions that I don't know the answer to make me seem stupid in front of our fans. They haven't heard from us in a month and you're just making me look like an idiot.
Well, I felt you made me look like an idiot with that question earlier.
What question?
My dream team of president. Presidential ticket.
So you're getting me back.
To go this assassination thing, and you totally ran me off the train. Stole my mojo.
I shot you in the back of the train station.
In the content We're getting feedback from our fans to say, yeah, if there's a current event you can tie into the history lessons. I've got 7 tabs open on my screen. I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I'm what are you talking about?
Continental Army for anyone in a time when no one would consider shooting a president because people had manners and good behavior.
I was just saying I'm struggling like the boys in the winter of 76. That's all I'm saying.
I know, we know you love the 18th century. But anyway, coming back to our Mr. Charles Guiteau. So why did he do it? What was his motive? So it is said that Guiteau was expecting a job from President Garfield. I swear to God. So a little context here. So back in the early 1880s, and he's been going back almost to the beginning of the Republic, the idea of patronage is something that had always been a big topic. So it even goes back to Alexander Hamilton, who would always say, you know what? If we want people to get to believe in this federal government we're going to create, we got to get them invested in it somehow. And what way to get people invested into something than giving them a job? Obviously, handouts and welfare were not a thing back then. But, if you can say, hey, if you help me get elected, you'll get a job or you'll get some position, head of the customs house, which is basically a tax collector, or, some other, cabinet level position, or just some organizer in some way, basically a job. So if you get me elected, you'll get a job out of it.
I see.
And it's kind of how it was run from Andrew Jackson. Kind of, it really turned another, I don't think he started the spoil system, which is what it was called, but he definitely amplified it. So Andrew Jackson kind of turned it up to 11. And basically from him onward, it was kind of just what you did. When you got elected, you knew you had to kind of, repay those that helped you get elected. Lobbying like we know it today, or the modern bureaucratic state, it was kind of a little more black and white. It was like, all right, you got your guy, I got my guy. Whoever wins, I know I'll get the job and you won't. It was very black and white. Like I said, it wasn't lobbying in the current sense of the word, or you have to have big money donors donate to your campaign, or like super PACs and all this and that, like just kind of basically find ways to get your election funded so you can win. It was literally, you'd have guys go out, try to find votes for you. And that would include everything from, having, going to election rolls and making sure that dead people vote, or people vote twice or 3 times. We talk about Gangs New York, where they kind of do that. It was that sort of situation. So yeah, when a president won, it was more than just his and his vice president and his cabinet's immediate cabinet who were going to benefit. It was potentially, I guess in the hundreds of, and by the time of the 1880s, it might have been in like maybe low thousands. Like there was a lot of jobs at stake. I know that much. And so this Guiteau guy, he was part of, what was called, the stalwart faction of Republicans. So he was a Republican, as many were in the early 1880s. Democrats kind of really weren't part of the show at that point anymore. And so this guy basically said that he helped write a speech that got Garfield elected. Like that was his story, and that's what he was sticking to. Turns out it was pretty inconsequential. And effectively, I think he wrote the speech for Ulysses S. Grant, who was president 2 terms prior. But everyone's like, yeah, no, this guy had it really had minimal impact on the outcome, if any. And so, but, he was convinced that he helped Garfield get elected. And so the assassination didn't happen until, I think over a year and change into his presidency. So Garfield had already been the president for a little bit. But in that time, basically, this dude was just kind of loitering around and hanging out, like following him around, like basically expecting a job. So he actually thought he should be awarded a diplomatic post for his supposedly vital assistance, first asking for a consulship in Vienna, then expressing a willingness to, quote, settle for one in Paris. He loitered around Republican headquarters in New York City during the winter of 1880, 1881, expecting rewards for his speech, but to no avail.
So far, let me just interrupt real quick. So far, this behavior seems somewhat normal.
You think so?
I'll be honest. I think
in the context
that
of the times, yeah. Okay.
I just think in general, though, I think there's some people who think like, wow, I did so much more than they actually do. And there's this like self-importance that is just like not really there, but they think they're so great. I think that happens a lot. So obviously this guy's got a little bit of a screw loose, like hanging around and thinking that, you know, he's going to get a job out of it. But I could see a lot of people thinking like, wow, look at all this I did for, you know, even like, you know, Biden or Trump or Obama, like, oh, I ran his campaign out of some crappy town and friggin', I don't know. I don't want to say a particular state, but, you know, some, you know,
some inflated sense of self. And I think especially in the social media era, I think you're onto something. Like,
especially like you know, like, oh.
And well, I think maybe it's even more mentally ill now because one, you know, it's not true, but also two, like those people that have that never even had a conversation with this president. This is still a time where you could like literally get into the White House. Like you can have an audience.
Like, you could like go into the
president
Oval Office. Like
you could just get in there and be seen.
And they were probably like saying like, oh yeah, okay, buddy. Yeah. Thanks for your help. Yeah. I'll see what I can do. Like you think something like that was going on?
Well, yeah. So even after his inauguration, March 5th, 1881, the day after, he was put into office, he still believed he needed an award. So he obtained entrance to the White House and saw the president on March 8th, 1881, dropping off a copy of his speech as a reminder of the campaign work which he had done on Garfield's behalf.
What a loser.
He spent 2 more months roaming around Washington, staying at rooming houses and sneaking away without paying for his meals and lodging. Passed his days loitering in hotel lobbies to read old newspaper, using hotel stationery to write letters to those who he thought could help him obtain an appointment from Garfield. So, ran around to the State Department, the White House, just all over the place. So on May 13th, 1881, he was banned from the White House waiting room. So the dude was enough of a thorn in the side. They were like, all right, dude, like 2 months have gone by. Like, you're done. So the following day, he encountered Secretary of State
I feel a
James
little bit
G.
bad
Blaine.
for him. Like, could you think they ever said to him, like, nah, you're not getting a thing there? Or they were trying to be too nice? Like, it's like kind of like when you're, you know, being too nice to turn somebody down, like in the dating scene or something, like don't want to say, like, so it's just like, yeah, well, maybe we'll go out sometime, you know, oh yeah, maybe we'll find some time to go out, and then it never happens.
I mean, if he wasn't well,
I'm not saying from experience, but
no, I'll say, I don't think in 1881, I don't think people were as concerned as being PC. I think they would use pretty, you know, abrupt and vulgar language to describe someone. Now, I don't know necessarily to their face. They might have just been like, come on, you got to leave. I don't know if like they would have shouted him down and said like you're mentally ill, we're going to throw you into an asylum. I don't know how honest and brutal they would have been with him, but it got to a point where the Secretary of State James Blaine told him, never speak to me again on the Paris consulship as long as you live. So that was the job he really wanted. So he had his eyes set on like one job. His own family. But his own family, 6 years prior in 1875, judged him to be insane and attempted to have him committed, but he had escaped. So I guess he was a little nuts. Now his mania took a violent turn, and he decided that he had been commanded by a higher power to kill the president. He later stated, I leave my justification to God.
Well, there you go.
Borrowed $15, which is the equivalent of $470 in 2023, and went out to buy a revolver. He prepared carefully and eventually ended up at that railroad station in D.C., and he shot President Garfield in the lobby.
And what happened to him?
He was apprehended, jailed, and eventually executed.
What if they would have been like, oh, you're right, you should have a job in here. You sold us.
Yeah.
So we need somebody like that, somebody with the...
Yeah, he did not.
Okay.
He didn't do well. Dictated an autobiography to the New York Herald, ending it with a personal ad for a nice Christian lady under 30. He was totally oblivious.
After he got arrested?
Yeah. On his like way to court.
This guy... He's like saying like he's shooting his shot, like giving a dating profile shout out there.
He received ample media attention during his trial for his bizarre behavior, including constantly insulting his defense team, formatting his testimony in epic poems, which he recited at length, and soliciting legal advice from random spectators in the audience via past notes.
Dude. I mean, this guy, he's a loser, but he sounds pretty awesome.
I don't think I'm like
there should be a movie about.
I watched the whole documentary on
about
this
guy.
It's a nut.
There should be a movie about this guy, dude. It's just funny to me. I don't know. Insulting his own defense team, talking in poems.
Totally oblivious to the American public's outrage and hatred of him, even after he was almost killed twice.
Loved him.
Yeah.
Hey, sometimes ignorance is bliss. You gotta say.
And even he said Garfield was killed not by him, but by medical malpractice. So even he called it like he saw it.
No, he didn't.
It says, I deny the killing, if your honor, please. We admit the shooting. So he also spoke in the third person, meaning he had other voices in his head. Under the felony murder rule.
This guy freaking rules, dude. I love this guy. I gotta be honest. I mean, it's not cool, but man, that's awesome. This guy's a freaking pistol.
Seriously. Oh man, yeah. So
wait, so what was this quote? I interrupted you. What was this quote?
He said, I quote, I deny the killing, if your honor, please. We admit the shooting. So he's like, I shot him, but I didn't kill him. Which
that's awesome.
I guess it's true. 2.5 months go by. It's like, dude, I just shot the guy. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I just shot him. But
I mean, he definitely has an argument for that. Although,
but
the medical malpractice wouldn't have necessarily been much of a factor had he not been shot in the back.
But unfortunately, I think if Garfield would have survived, he would have stayed off the execution. But under the felony murder rule, he was still legally responsible for Garfield's death, even if it did not occur as the direct result of the shooting. So he was housed at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in the southeastern quadrant of Washington, D.C. throughout the trial and up until his execution. It was one of the first high-profile cases in the U.S. where the insanity defense was considered. He vehemently insisted he had been legally insane at the time of the shooting, but was not really medically insane, which caused a major rift with his defense lawyers. And which was probably contributed to the jury's impression that Cattell was merely trying to deny responsibility. So, famously danced his way up to the gallows. Famously danced his way up to the gallows and waved at the audience, shook his hands with his executioner, and as a last request recited a poem that he had written called, quote, I am going to the Lordy. He requested an orchestra to play as he sang the poem. It was denied. As per request with the executioner, Cattell signaled that he was ready to die by dropping the paper.
Can you read the poem?
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia article for it. 26 spoken before execution. The idea is that of a child babbling to his mama and his papa. I wrote it this morning about 10 o'clock. The poem is repetitive, containing
didn't even take his time.
Hallelujah.
What else was he doing all that time? He waited. He waited till the last minute to write this thing.
I am going to the Lordy. I am so glad. I don't know why I have a southern accent to it. Sorry. I'm going to the Lordy. I am so glad. I'm going to the Lordy. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. I am going to the Lordy. I love the Lordy with all my soul. Glory, hallelujah. And that is the reason I'm going to the Lord. It's just a lot of glory and hallelujahs, and it's just all that. I'm with the Lord.
Yeah, that sounds like something that you would write 3 hours before your execution after spending years behind bars with nothing else to do.
Except thinking everyone fell in love with you, except thinking, oh, wait, they're actually going to kill me this time. I thought they loved me. Yeah. So.
That guy, I mean, he's something. That guy, that's a character right there, I'll tell you. Had he not killed somebody, he would have made something out for himself.
Yeah, the next one. Okay, so R.I.P. Garfield. Chester A. Arthur would replace him.
Garfield. I gotta say, R.I.P. Gattu. They broke the mold with him. Thankfully, he's number one. He's my ace of spades right now, I have to say.
So before we move on to the next assassin, the biggest consequence of this shooting was civil service reform. That was kind of the big topic. Everyone thought patronage had already gotten out of control, and corruption in the government. And this
So like quid pro quo cut type stuff going
they're
on.
tired of it. And this assassination by an unstable, insane job seeker who wouldn't let go of a job in Paris, a consulship in Paris. Like, all right, this is just, we have to like bring in civil service reform here. And so effectively the spoils system was ended as it was known. And the following president, Chester Arthur, implemented or signed into law the Pendleton Service Act, which some have said is actually ushered in, and that's the kind of the origin of the modern bureaucratic state, but we won't get into all that. And there was it became merit-based. So you couldn't just get a job because your friend got you a job because you helped him win an election. You actually had to pass merit-based tests and all that kind of stuff as they wanted you to think.
Sure. Oh, yeah, that doesn't happen.
Then people just got more clever, and then some would say that lobbying kind of started there, and then you had to bring in more wealthy donors to elections. So, they wanted to end one form of corruption, but it is argued that another form, and maybe even a more pervasive form, and one that you can't really root out, would come
you'll never
on
be
after.
able to root any of them.
So we're next one. So again, about 20 years later. So we're now in September of 1901. President William McKinley is in his second term, early in his second term. And he is at the Pan American Exposition at the Temple of Music in Buffalo, New York. And he was shaking hands with the public when an anarchist by the name of Leon Kolzgoys shot him twice in the abdomen. He died 8 days later of gangrene caused by the wounds. He was the third president to be assassinated, following Abraham Lincoln in 1865 and Garfield in 1881. So, a little different situation here. Not as personal. I think that there's kind of already in that 20 years, it's like a little more of that kind of separation between the president and the public, I think, kind of set in. I think the president became more of a figurehead. It wasn't a guy who would get me a job. And so McKinley at this time, I think, was more representative of a greater problem. And so this anarchist, Leon Kolzgoys, he was part of a labor movement, a part of a lot of, unionizing, and at this time, and kind of the early progressive era, and so was very much against all forms of government. And he was actually inspired by an Italian man by the name of Gaetano Bresci, who had killed the King of Italy in 1900. So he was actually living in Paterson, New Jersey, where, fun fact, my great-grandfather comes from. And it turns out it was a hotbed for a lot of anarchists and a lot of rebel rousers. So I don't know if the government has anything on my great-grandfather, but hopefully not. So, Leon Kolzgoys, he was inspired by this assassination. He was definitely playing up to the, we live in the land of opportunity, we live in the land of freedom kind of talk, yet the poor, sleep outside and can't afford a bed and all that kind of talk. So he was born in Detroit, Michigan, 1873, in a Polish family, which is why I can't say his last name. And he had a real rough go. His family really took it in the shorts during the economic crash, the Panic of 1893. And he found little comfort in the Catholic Church and other immigrant institutions. So he sought others who shared his concerns regarding injustice. He started off working in kind of moderate socialist circles, but that would eventually intensify to him becoming a full-blown anarchist, which is someone who believes in no government whatsoever, constantly finding ways to tear it down, no private property. So, real kind of just angry guy, put the blame on the president, did something about it, shot. So, Matt's falling asleep here.
He's a socialist.
No, he's an anarchist.
That's all I needed to know. Okay, he's an anarchist. Okay.
So he's an anarchist. And yeah, I think it didn't matter who it was that he shot.
Grew up in the
He shot him
Depression,
because
blaming
the big guy. Blaming the C.
He's blaming the president for his economic turmoil.
And those are the
It's
poor and
bad.
working class. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, so
Not as funny.
No, not as no. I don't think he was mentally insane. I think he kind of was just fed up.
Yeah.
But your boy Teddy Roosevelt had a thing or two to say about him during his first annual message. So when he assumed office after McKinley, he gave a speech to the Senate and the House of Representatives, and not very fond. He said basically, okay, you want to kill Lincoln the way you did? All right, I get it. You want to kill Garfield that way? Yeah, I get that too. But this guy, it's the worst. How could you do it? So here's what he said. So Teddy Roosevelt on December 3rd, 1901 said, of the last 7 elected presidents, McKinley is the third who has been murdered, and the bare recital of this fact is sufficient to justify grave alarm among all loyal American citizens. Moreover, the circumstances of this, the third assassination of an American president, have a peculiarly sinister significance. Both President Lincoln and President Garfield were killed by assassins of types unfortunately not uncommon in history. President Lincoln falling a victim to the terrible passions aroused by 4 years of civil war, and President Garfield to the revengeful vanity of a disappointed office seeker. President McKinley was killed by an utterly depraved criminal belonging to that body of criminals who object to all governments, good and bad alike, who are against any form of popular liberty, if it is guaranteed by even the most just and liberal laws, and who are as hostile to the upright exponent of a free people's sober will as to the tyrannical and irresponsible despot. He later continued, saying, anarchy is no more an expression of social discontent than picking pockets or wife beating. So,
Okay. Honestly,
this is a time period I found interesting. It's like anarchism was not just the U.S. It was becoming like an international concern, and even to this day, on the citizenship application, you have to answer things. And you're not an anarchist. You're not, supporter of anything related to anarchism, and that all goes back to this time period.
how did he kill him?
He shot him at an exposition in New York. He had a gun in his hand. It was covered with a handkerchief. He walked up to him and shot him twice. I just feel like anarchism and communism. I mean, they're the worst.
That's a boring one.
No,
Dude.
but they're the worst. No, they're
one.
the worst people in human history. I stand by that. But it's kind of, it doesn't get people riled up as much as a crazy guy thinking he's super popular after shooting somebody when he's really not.
Hey.
Or a guy who shoots a guy in the back of the head and then jumps off stage and breaks his leg and then has to run.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So, yeah, he was killed very shortly after he was executed, and then his body was burned in sulfuric acid. So, like, they electrocuted him, and then they put him in sulfuric acid to disintegrate the body, and that was the end of him.
So they really didn't like this guy. Sounds like Teddy was upset about him, and yeah,
Teddy was a little upset, but he was, like I said, he was inspired by a recent assassination of the King Umberto of Italy by a fellow anarchist. So he thought, hey, maybe I can one up this guy. Became a little bit of a, 1-2 punch.
Well, he didn't want
a copycat situation.
Yeah. That one didn't tickle my fancy.
Didn't tickle my fancy, but I will say, tying it into what's going on in the current situation, where things stand now, I think you would agree. There's a lot of talk about were the Secret Service prepared, and were they ready, and did they know what they were getting
Trump
into
thing, dude?
For the Trump thing. So I will say that if it wasn't for the McKinley assassination, the Secret Service would not be responsible for protecting the president. So for the first 40 years of its existence, give or take, first 40 years of its existence, Secret Service was primarily responsible for counterfeiting and stopping and preventing counterfeiting. It was first created at the end of the Civil War, at a time when there was a lot of paper money in circulation, and so they were responsible for basically preventing and they were effectively part of the Treasury, and they were responsible. And to this day, it's still part of their mandate, but I think they're split off into different branches.
That's a pretty interesting side gig to take on, for going from counterfeit money, covering counterfeit money, to protecting the president, you know?
Yeah, and I guess I didn't get too much into the nuts and bolts. It's like, well, okay, well, there's why them? Beginning in 1894, Secret Service agents were protecting then President Grover Cleveland, but only on a part-time basis. Members of Congress were loath to formally establish a national law enforcement agency, preferring to leave functions related to law and order to individual states, as they still should be. However, it was when Cleveland's successor McKinley was assassinated in 1901 that momentum for such a federally run agency began to build. Came at a critical time in U.S. history. Up until then, general hostility towards centralized power and remaking the Secret Service as a national police force would, in effect, be taking some law enforcement power away from the states. However, after McKinley was killed, the incident became a factor in establishing the role of the Secret Service in protecting the president. There was a recognition of the president as a target.
I'll be honest. I mean, the name Secret Service makes way more sense to be protecting the president than to be looking at counterfeit money. So yeah, it's like kind of like it makes way more sense.
U.S. had become a dominant player on the international stage. They're just saying like, well, okay, what happened after Lincoln happened after Garfield. Why weren't people up in arms about having a federal police force protecting the president after those two? What made McKinley so special? Well,
maybe to your point is like this guy was kind of like a normal dude, and it made it a little bit more like a realistic possibility that it's going to happen.
Well, also, I think this article is saying there's a kind of an international element to it as well. Like this guy was also inspired by international threats. You're starting to have international organizations, anarchists, communists, socialists, they're all talking to one another. Like they're going across borders. So it's like, well, maybe, okay, the states aren't competent enough or can't coordinate. So yeah, the U.S. was becoming an imperial power. Per McKinley, he was an imperial president. And leaders at the national level started to become more concerned about political threats both inside and outside the nation's borders. Going back to the Haymarket riot in Chicago, 1886.
All right. We get it. Okay, that's interesting. We don't have to get too far into that. I get it. That's it's a good thought. Two good potential reasons why that happened. We won't necessarily fact check it. Fans, if you want to get back to us on that, let us know.
So he was seen as a dangerous foreigner, but the guy was an American citizen. But because he had a weird sounding Polish last name, there we go again.
What was it? What was it again?
Kolzgos. Czolgosz.
Wow, they got some names over there, huh?
So like people found out who shot him, but he was actually an American citizen. He was born in Detroit. But they were like, well, clearly this guy's a foreigner. I mean, he was definitely foreign influenced, but just because his name, there you go again. Can't say his name, you're out of luck. You got to change your name. Can't say it.
Tell me about it.
If even the president can't say it in 11 different letters, you got to do something about it. So there you go. President McKinley, done. September 6th.
R.I.P. All right, President McKinley. They did name him out after him, so I think his legacy will live on.
It's been changed.
Although I think it's been changed.
Thank you, President Obama. So that's all I got in terms of completed assassinations. The remaining two I got are both attempted, and the victims are related to one another. Any idea on who I could be talking about?
The Roosevelt brothers. The Roosevelt brothers.
Cousins. like thrice removed. Thrice, if I got it, yeah. Yeah. I'm shocked. Now you found that Maybe you can walk me through.
I had no idea that Teddy Roosevelt had gotten assassinated until I saw something online about it.
That's interesting because he's a tough son of a gun. I don't know if I would have liked Roosevelt's all of his policies, but he's a tough guy. I mean,
he seems pretty cool. He made his way on the Mount Rushmore somehow, dude.
So yes, the Theodore Roosevelt. At this point, when he was shot on October 14th, 1912, he had already been out of the White House. So this time, Taft was president, and William Howard, and so Roosevelt, he thought about running a third term initially, but back then, like, we didn't have a 22nd Amendment, which limited a president to only serving 2 terms. You stood on precedent, and George Washington set that tradition up by only serving 2 terms. So every president after him wouldn't even like consider it because it was just seen as you can't go against Washington and his precedent. But by 1912, things were getting dicey. Roosevelt was like, I can't stand Taft. I know he was my guy, my heir apparent, but the dude can't get out of a tub. Dollar diplomacy is driving me crazy. We got to be more aggressive for him. That's like the only thing people know about him is they got stuck in a tub.
He did?
Taft, yeah. That's like when you ask someone, what do you know about this president? Like, that's the one thing. Oh, he's the big fat president who couldn't get stuck out of the tub. What?
Talk about a bad day at work.
Yeah, well, he never wanted to be president to begin with, so he was probably just like, oh, no, I don't want to be here anyway. I want to be a Supreme Court justice. And I'll get my wish one day, but I'm stuck in a tub right now. Oh. Let me ask Chad.
Was he, like, physically, like, wedged into the tub? Or, like, he just couldn't get out?
I don't know. I don't know if this is also part of the reason why Roosevelt decided to run third party for a third term, but let's see. It's a popular anecdote, but it is more myth than fact. While Taft, who weighed over 300 pounds, did have issues with bathtubs due to his size, no concrete evidence that he ever got stuck in one. The tale likely originated and spread due to his significant size and the era's fascination with larger-than-life figures. He did have to follow up Teddy Roosevelt, which would have been tough. According to some sources, Taft did have a specially designed large bathtub installed in the White House to accommodate him comfortably. This bathtub was reportedly big enough to fit 4 average-sized men.
That's all, dude. That's a tub, dude. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Keep going. So what does Teddy Roosevelt?
Roosevelt.
So he's like, Taft is a bozo.
Taft's
I want to run for a third party.
Third party. He ran third term, third party. The Bull Moose Party. That's what it'll be christened. And aside from that, some would say that part of the reason why Wilson won is because Teddy Roosevelt ran and basically split the Republican ticket effectively, allowing the Democrats to win. So he was running third party, and during the campaign, so October of 1912, so he was campaigning for the presidency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And a man by the name of John Schrank shot him in the chest, and the bullet penetrated Roosevelt's steel eyeglass case, passed through a 50-page thick, single-folded copy of his speech titled "Progressive Cause Greater Than Any Individual," which he was carrying in his jacket pocket. John Schrank was immediately disarmed and captured.
It didn't hit him.
It lodged in his rib, but it didn't pierce any vital organs.
Okay.
He might have been lynched had Roosevelt not shouted for Schrank to remain unharmed. He assured the crowd he was all right and ordered police to take charge of Schrank and to make sure no violence was done to him. He would go on to give a 1-hour speech after being shot. And he is quoted as saying, so once he was already in front of the stage and giving the speech, he was a little more soft-spoken than usual because he was very boisterous. Teddy Roosevelt was known for big character, big energy, full of life, but he was a little more somber this one, dealing with that bullet in his rib cage. And he came out and said, quote, "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." He could have mic dropped right there and left the stage and probably would have.
I know, and he would have won the presidency for the next 25 years probably.
I don't know if they marketed it as
awesome.
much. I don't know if getting shot back then would get you as much street cred now. Like I feel like everyone's talking, "Oh my God, Trump won the election because he got shot." I don't know if back then it was just like, yeah dude just kept with the punches. Just welcome to working 9 to 5, blue collar, just taking it in the shorts in 1912, working on the dockyards.
Hey,
dude,
you're right. Yeah, that's true.
It's just life on the dock. I mean, it
They
probably
didn't put him up on a pedestal like that. Probably they're like, "Yeah, my best friend got shot last weekend. He showed up to work again on Monday, working on the railroads, making big rocks into smaller rocks."
Again, I don't think I would jive with a lot of his policies, but I think probably the embodiment of American badass.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Wonder if Kid Rock knows that story. That's a good one.
So
that's a good one. Okay, so that's cool.
So yeah,
That's cool.
big moose.
50-page speech though.
But anyway, so it's kind of looking at John Schrank. So who was the attempted assassin? So this guy had an interesting little backstory here. So he was So John Schrank, he was an immigrant from the Kingdom of Bavaria in the German Empire. He was a saloon keeper.
They make good pretzels.
Make very good pretzels. He was a saloon keeper, and he was very wealthy, very well-to-do, so he wasn't poor and broken down. He wasn't an anarchist, wasn't looking for a job. But he, more than even the other two, might have been more what we call clinically psychotic. Actually, I don't even know if they say that anymore, than the other two. So he was claiming that he heard voices and had hallucinations of the ghost of assassinated U.S. President William McKinley telling him that Roosevelt was his murderer, and the ghost asked him to avenge his death.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But also, this guy, he had a little... he didn't like the idea of someone going against tradition. He's like, George Washington go for a third term. I don't want you going for a third term.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of... Let me think about how I can word this. I think maybe people who are a little unstable or on some kind of spectrum don't take change very well. And maybe something like that was going on. Like, this guy can't run another term. And they have to have their way.
According to family and friends, Schrank developed a great admiration for American ideals and the founding fathers, naming historical figures such as George Washington, James Madison, Tadeusz Kosciuszko, and Abraham Lincoln as his personal heroes, and kept tags and documents from his immigration process as mementos. He was described as mild-mannered, reserved but cheerful, with overhigh sense of humor and well-liked by his neighbors. But he was quiet, shy, and withdrawn, and by his own account, never formed friendship. Very lonely man, but loved Tadeusz Kosciuszko. So what else matters?
You're lying.
I'm not lying.
You're lying about...
I'm not lying. I'll send you the screenshot. Put it on Twitter for our fans. X. So... I'm telling you,
George Washington,
James Madison,
Tadeusz Kosciuszko, and Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, Sid Lincoln. Yeah, but he put Kosciuszko in there. He gets a pass. So he had no friendships. He was kind of a loner, kind of a sad life when I was reading, but we won't go into those details. But yeah, he was. So he says he had visions of William McKinley telling him that
Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt killed him.
Basically, like he must go.
Is there any fact behind that, or
no? I don't think so. But he was a lapsed Catholic, something you and I can probably both relate to. Partially because his foster parents did not attend church, writing, "I am a Roman Catholic. I love my religion, but I hate my church as long as the Roman parish is not independent from Rome, and as long as Catholic priests are prevented from getting married, as long as Rome is still more engaged in politics and accumulation of money, contrary to the teachings of the Lord.
This guy's kind of like half like a pretty I don't know what I was going to say. I don't want to compliment the guy, but he sounds like he's making some sense there.
Yeah, so he had, I mean, I think he had like one close friend from Germany, and then they died, and I think he kind of drifted and just had his saloon, and so he had money problems. I think he was just like a loner and, you know, mentally ill.
I just don't get why these guys can't just let things be. Just let it go off their backs. I
guess I should take that advice sometimes.
I'm a little...
How old was it, dude?
How old was this guy?
67. Oh, that's when he died. No, well, he went into an insane asylum for the rest of his life. So he committed the act in 1912, but he lived another 31 years. So
he was 36.
And the panel, yeah, he was just...
How old are you?
He was... I'm 76. Yeah, buddy.
You're one German friend dying away from...
I got
can't put on the list
Italian
somewhere.
Anarchist heritage in there too. Oh man, I got everyone on there. I wanted for a job.
They might be
more paid job. I got the triple threat. No meatloaf for this guy.
Oh boy, yeah, you're a foreigner. You're a foreigner. Wow, pretty wild. But these are like the old school assassin guys. These aren't like the new school guys. So I think you're okay. So he
had no visitors and received no mail in the entire time that he was in this hospital, which would become a prison eventually.
That's a shame. Like his family just...
Like he had no family. I mean, most of his family was in Germany. I think a bunch of people died. Someone died from consumption, raised Catholic, formerly adopted. He's got a whole backstory, but you know, made something of himself. Was a saloon operator, which for a German guy from Bavaria, probably like the peak of the mountain at that time period. But yeah, he didn't invest his money really well. Again, drinking a little too much, smoking a little too many cigars.
So got
obsessed. Just found something to clutch onto and got obsessed.
And it was mainly that he was, and it was mainly because he was running for a third term.
Yeah, even in the ChatGPT thing. Even in the ChatGPT thing, like, tell me what would Schrank say to Roosevelt if he actually had a conversation with him?
You think you're going to run a third term? See, I'll show you.
It's one of those things. Like that's like encapsulates for me. Like that's the issue. Even to now, like it's like the guy's Roosevelt as a man is like there's certain heroic attributes and American attributes and patriotic attributes that like one stands for. But like the Schrank guy, I agree with. If that's what he actually believed, I agree with some of the things he's saying, but it's like, that's always the constant juxtaposition, like these like competing things, right? It's like, you know, I'd say Roosevelt's an American hero, but he's not kind of living up to the original American ideals, in my opinion, you know?
Well, he does make a point of like, if they vote for me, then they vote for me. That's also part of being.
Yeah, but that's also something the founding fathers, which Mr. Schrank knew a thing or two about. That's like, well, that you're just pandering and you're playing to people's emotions, and because they can't be in the room with you all the day and know all the issues that are going on. That's why we live in a representative republic. So by just you saying, well, if they want me, they want me. I mean, granted, Andrew Jackson kind of started that, but like you're just playing on people's emotions at that point, which I think the founding generation would be very worried about. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Let's just say he might have got, if you were alive when he was in prison, he would have gotten one letter.
Yes.
And it would have been from John N.
And I would say, you know what? If I had to pick a presidential ticket and I couldn't have someone running a third term, you would be on it. You'd be one of my two. You'd be one of my two. You and Kosciuszko would run this town.
There you go. going all the way back
All
to
right.
2 hours ago, we finally found out who John's presidential ticket would be. It would be the guy who tried to kill Teddy Roosevelt and Tadeusz Kadusko. Which one of those would be your president, John?
It would be a.
Even though Tadeusz technically couldn't run for either, but let's just in this fantasy world, especially
He couldn't run for either.
Wasn't he?
He became a naturalized citizen in 1783.
I thought you had to be born in America.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Naturally
And I'll tell you
born
what, this
citizen.
dude, whatever,
But I don't know about that. We have to, at the time that the country became official, I think anyone who was given it at that time or then born thereafter.
Okay, well, in any case, would it be him or would it be, what's the guy's name who Teddy Roosevelt?
John Schrank?
John Schrank. Would it be the Schrank Kachusko ticket or the Kachusko Schrank ticket? That just really rolls off the tongue. That's that real publicist's dream right there. I would say campaign manager just slam dunking it down the old campaign trail. Schrank Kachusko.
Kazi up to Schrank and Kachuso. I think you got to go Kachusko. We love to elect a former general,
Yeah.
a fighter. I mean, Kachusko would definitely get it, but if he died in office, I'd be concerned. I say I like what Schrank said. I like what he does. Clearly,
It's a
like
shame.
what he says, don't like the action. Like what he says, don't like.
That's the thing.
the
Maybe
execution of it.
instead of trying to kill Teddy Roosevelt, that's the thing. He took the coward's way out. Maybe the real thing to do would have been to run against him.
Well, I mean, you had Democrats who were running against him on a small government states' rights platform. That ship was kind of sailing at that point.
But anybody can run for president. He could have ran.
Hurrah. No, he couldn't have because he was a naturalized citizen, born in Bavaria, as I said.
Oh, both of them, huh? Oh, shoot. I forgot about that. Okay, so
Both of
never
who?
mind. He couldn't have run again.
Both of who?
Him and Kachusko potentially
have
couldn't
run.
have run. Wow.
I think Kachusko maybe could have.
Yeah,
Schrank
we'd have to
certainly
do a
not.
little fact checker on that one.
Could foreign fighters
fans,
who were
can you
given
guys look into that?
naturalized citizenship.
Let's call the fans out let's task them with something. Can you guys do a little bit of research on if Tadeusz Kachusko could have ran for president if he was a citizen?
Boy. All right. This one shouldn't take super long, but I think it's an honorable mention.
Yeah, let's do the old honorable
Again,
mention. Your favorite
like
president?
Another 20 years later. My fave. So this was not probably on any list of attempted assassination because technically speaking, well, not technically, just factually speaking, the president was not struck with a bullet. He was not hit whatsoever. So on February 15th, 1933, 17 days before President-elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt's inauguration, he was giving a night speech in Miami, Florida, in the back of a car, open car. A man by the name of Giuseppe Zangara
Good name.
fired 5 shots with a handgun he had purchased a couple of days before. He missed his target and instead killed Anton Kermack, the mayor of Chicago, and injured 5 bystanders. So another reason why I thought we include him is I think this kind of maybe draws the closest parallel to what happened this past weekend. Although the former President Trump was clipped in the ear, that's not getting shot in the rib cage. It's not getting shot and suffering from gangrene. I'd say this one might be the closest to it. I mean, he was at a speech.
Oh, okay.
He'd fired multiple shots. He killed someone, that being the mayor of Chicago, and injured multiple bystanders. So if we want to compare apples to apples, I would say this one's probably the closest to this past weekend. So, and I never heard about that. I never knew there was even an attempt on Roosevelt's life. But a little backstory on our friend, Mr. Giuseppe Zangara here. He was born on September 7th, 1900 in Ferrozano, Calabria, Italy. So also couldn't run for president, could not be part of my ticket either way. And after serving with the Royal Italian Army in the Tyrolean Alps during World War I, he did a variety of menial jobs in his home village before emigrating with his uncle to the U.S. in 1923. He settled in Paterson, New Jersey, and became a naturalized citizen of the United States in 1929.
Another Paterson, New Jersey, huh?
There's a high probability he and my great-grandfather would have crossed paths. I'm almost certain of it. Can't have been that big of a town. He worked as a bricklayer with little education. He was 5 feet tall, short little guy. And he had some very bad pain in his abdomen, which he says he got from childhood. So I think he said he attributed his pain to being forced to do grueling physical labor on his father's farm from an early age. He said the pain began when he was 6 years old. So I think this guy already kind of started life with a bit of a grudge. And observers at the time and following his execution have discussed his mental state. He said he was mentally ill, and he ought to have had an insanity defense presented on his behalf, but others said he was sane.
So what was his reasoning?
He was just
I think it's bored.
Like anarchist. I don't know why he did it.
Yeah.
He was giving an impromptu speech. I think also poor, working class.
What year was this?
Probably the victim of some what am I saying? Racism or some kind of prejudice. This is 1933.
Okay.
17 days before Roosevelt became president, sworn in to be president. So we're now, it's several years into the Great Depression.
Yeah.
So
tensions were
it's
high.
just like rough times.
Yeah.
And he was working the occasional odd job and living off his savings. And he was just over it. But he was so short that he had to stand on a wobbly metal folding chair at the speech, peering over the hat of a woman named Lillian Cross to get a clear aim at his target from 25 feet away. He placed his gun over Mrs. Cross's right shoulder. She was only about 4 inches taller than he was and weighed 105 pounds. After he fired the first shot, Cross and others grabbed his arm and he fired 4 more wildly. 5 people were hit. Roosevelt was unharmed. And there's some really cute story, which I think Roosevelt was just using for propaganda's sake. Anton Kermack, the mayor of Chicago, was being taken to the hospital, and Roosevelt was cradling him in his arms as the car rushed there. After arriving, Cermak spoke to Roosevelt, and before he died 19 days later, allegedly uttered the line that is engraved on his tomb, quote, "I'm glad it was me, not you." The Tribune reported the quote without attributing it to a witness, and most scholars doubt that it was ever said.
Yeah, that sounds like no way, dude. No way are you saying that. Also, if I said that, what's that?
I think somebody had a crush on somebody.
Oh, you think? Oh, wait, he said it to a woman?
No, he said it to Roosevelt. Not Roosevelt. I'm glad I died and not you.
Yeah, so you think he had a crush on Roosevelt?
No. He was very charming. I don't like the guy, but he's very charming.
FDR?
Apparently. I don't know. Yeah, he was a swooner. He was not monogamous. I know that much.
I believe that. I also, but like, I don't know, man. If I died and I died for somebody, I don't think I would want my gravestone to say like, "Oh, I'm glad it was me and not you," because that just kind of makes you seem like your life's more valuable than mine, and that's a bummer to say.
But I think even at that time, I think even the cult of personality.
If you say that one more time.
It's been said. So,
All right, so let's just do.
You're asking why he said it. So, what is Gonzaga's aftermath? Zangara motivation? He confessed in the Miami-Dade County Courthouse jail, saying, "Quote: I have the gun in my hand. I kill kings and presidents first, and next all capitalists." He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of attempted murder and was sentenced to 80 years in prison. As he was let out of the courtroom, Zangara told the judge, 4 times 20 is 80. Oh, judge, don't be stingy. Give me 100 years. Cermak died of peritonitis 14 days later, 2 days after Roosevelt's inauguration. As soon as Cermak died, we kind of had a
Wait, he just died out of like natural causes?
Peritonitis? No, I think swelling of the abdominal organs related to being the gunshot. He died related to being shot. So then Zangara was promptly indicted for first-degree murder in Cermak's death. He pleaded guilty to the additional murder charge and was sentenced to death by Circuit Court Judge Ulrich Thompson. And he was quoted as saying, "You give me electric chair. I know afraid of that chair. You one of capitalist. You is crooked man too. Put me in electric chair. I no care."
Now that I would have on my tombstone. I know have electric chair. Did they give him what he wanted, or did he get something else?
He was electrocuted, but under Florida law, a convicted murderer could not share cell space with another prisoner before his execution. But another convicted murderer was already awaiting execution at Rawford Prison. Zangara's sentence required prison officials to expand their waiting area for prisoners sentenced to death, and the, quote, death cell became, quote, death row.
Oh.
That's interesting. Yeah, that might be weird.
And then Death Row Records was born in the 90s. How about that?
Yeah. He became super enraged, so he was given the chair on March 20th, 1933. Old Sparky was the name of the electric chair. He became enraged when he learned that no newsreel cameras would be filming his final moments. His final statement was, "Viva l'Italia, goodbye to all poor peoples everywhere. Push the button, go ahead, push the button."
Like in Rush Hour.
Exactly.
Remember that scene?
Yeah.
Push the button. Push the button.
Oh, man, you scared? Chris Tucker, come on, man. Yeah, I think that's where Chris Tucker probably drew his inspiration from, reading this story on a website that didn't exist when he made the movie. Another cool thing about
doesn't knock my socks off.
That show The Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime?
No.
Have you heard of it?
I have.
It's also a book by Philip K. Dick. Zangara plays a significant role in the background in both the novel and the show. In this alternate history novel set after an Axis victory in World War II, it bases the point of divergence on the premise that Zangara succeeded in assassinating President-elect Roosevelt on February 15th, 1933 in Miami. I heard another... I read one of few... This is kind of not off topic because it's presidential, but another kind of divergent history, alternate history, this libertarian author, he wrote a book about, or like a whole universe around how Washington was hung after the Whiskey Rebellion. So it's like the rebels won, and then like America revolted again against George Washington for like sending troops out to Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And then they ended up hanging him, and then like a whole like divergent history like came from that.
That could be
That was
cool.
interesting.
That's a book?
Definitely a libertarian take on things. Yeah, it's a book. It's like a whole series.
What's it called?
The Probability Brooch by L. Neil Smith. So now Denver detective Win Bear on the trail of a murderer discovers much more than a killer. He accidentally stumbles upon the Probability Brooch, a portal to a myriad of worlds, some wildly different from
Dude, this looks
others.
out of control. Do you see the book cover?
With the parachute over like in Arizona?
No, like, oh, wow, man.
So here, I got it real quick. This is what I was...
What an utter load of crap.
The ostensible point of divergence leading to the North American Confederacy is the addition of a single word in the preamble to the United States Declaration of Independence, wherein it states that governments, quote, derive their just power from the unanimous consent of the governed. Inspired by this wording, Treasurer Secretary Albert Gallatin intercedes in the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794 to the benefit of the farmers rather than the fledgling United States government as he does in real life. This results in the rebellion becoming a second American Revolution, which ultimately leads to the overthrow of the government and the execution by firing squad of George Washington for treason. The U.S. Constitution is declared null and void, and Gallatin is proclaimed the second president. In 1795, a new caretaker government is established, and a revised version of the Articles of Confederation is ratified in 1797, but with a much greater emphasis on individual and economic freedom.
Oh, so it's like a utopia for libertarians.
I guess that's where it starts, and then it kind of moves wayward. Over the ensuing century, remnants of central government dissipate. Government can no longer create money, and only individual people can. It being backed by gold, silver, wheat, corn, iron, and even whiskey. Yeah, it's just like everything that libertarians love, just in a sci-fi book.
Sounds lame. Sounds kind of cool until like that Whiskey Rebellion thing is kind of interesting. I'd be more interested in if Al Gore won the 2000 election.
Ooh, Big Dog gets the snub too. Gallatin and James Monroe arranged the Louisiana Purchase from the French Empire.
Ooh.
Borrowing money from private sources against the value of the land. Dang.
Well, it was unconstitutional.
Thomas Jefferson successfully leads an abolitionist movement that brings a peaceful end to slavery in 1820.
Didn't he die in like 1821?
23 or 4. Some little thereafter.
Or no, 26. 50th anniversary of. All right, fans. Well, let's just wrap it up here. I'm going to cut all that out for sure. That was nonsense. But let's wrap.
Like the after. I think some people might be interested in that book. Put it in a little side thing.
All right, I will. Are you going to read it? Why don't you read it and we'll review it?
Why don't we both read it?
All right, I'll read it. How long is it? This book is probably trash. 384 pages. Oh, that's a lot, dude.
Probably get a shout out from some people, some of our fans.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, let's get back to it. So let's just wrap it up here. Do a little quick summary of the assassinations that we talked about. We briefly went over Lincoln, which was the first assassination. And then John, what were the three? Just give a one-line summary of the four that we went over.
So the first was the assassination of James A. Garfield by Charles Guiteau.
That's one of that's the number one. That's the top dog right now as far as
he
interest
was
level.
Looking for a job.
No, we don't have to go anymore. It's just what year was it?
1881.
So 1881. James Garfield assassinated by Charles Guiteau. Okay, then we went to, what was the next one?
20 years later, in 1901, President William McKinley was shot by an anarchist named Leon Kalsgoys.
Okay. And then the next one?
11 years after that, 1912, there was an attempted assassination of Teddy Roosevelt by German immigrant John Schrank. Who
we kind of learned is John's spiritual equal? I don't know.
No.
What would you say to that? What's like the personality doppelganger? What's that word?
Well, the doppelganger is always like a darker version of you, so maybe that's fair.
I don't know. Okay, sure.
Doppelganger. Okay.
John's historical doppelganger. John Bent. What's his name?
Schrank.
John Schrank.
From Bavaria.
Okay, and then we learned that John's dream presidential ticket would be Schrank Kosciuszko.
Kosciuszko Schrank.
Okay, and then the last but not least was FDR. getting assassinated by Giuseppe something.
No, he did not get assassinated.
Assassination attempt. Assassination attempt. Didn't even get hit by Giuseppe something or another.
Giuseppe Zangara. I wonder how much you practice.
And that was in 1933.
Listening in this. Yes.
What'd you say?
I wonder how much you practice active listening.
What do you mean?
When I talk.
Oh, dude, I'm the best.
His last name.
They're pretty hard
Giuseppe
when you say
something.
When you say it one time. How am I going to remember? That's why
I figured you'd have the pages pulled up too, reading as I'm reading.
What pages?
Wikipedia.
All right, so James Garfield, Charles Guiteau, 1881, 1901, William McKinley. That guy has a crazy name. What is it?
Leon Kołłąjoy's.
Leon Kołłąjoy's.
Polish.
Then 1910? No,
1912.
1912, Teddy Roosevelt, John Schrank. And then 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt wasn't hit. Giuseppe something. I can't remember it. Giuseppe what?
He'd be furious right now. Zangara.
He probably would be, but hit the button. Hit the button. And with that, I'm going to hit the button. Guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes into this episode. I hope I cut it down enough for it to be entertaining. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll be back with some more good content for you guys. John, you got anything else to add?
I'll just say, just don't read everything you see in the headlines. Just let the dust settle a little bit with the whole most recent events. Matt and I will get on it for you. We'll take care of the analysis.
Yeah, make sure you tune into us for the fact-finding mission of the recent events here, and we'll try our best. All right, John. That's it for me. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious.
And we say bye-bye.